Okay, so here we are at the beginning of the Age of Exploration, which is basically the end of the Age of Antiquity. In the Age of Antiquity, you're stuck on land and near the coast, but in the Age of Exploration, you're going to need to get out to those distant lands. So, how did this play out for me? I started off here at Carthage, and then fairly early on, as a Carthaginian, you get 2 for 1 with the colonists. So I settled Hippo, and I settled Matya. Isabella getting those bonuses with the natural wonders, I kind of felt like I had to settle in this location over here. I did Matya because it was the first thing I found that was near the coast, and I need to be near the coast because I need easy access to the distant lands. Also in the course of the game, I befriended and later incorporated Shamron, and the reason I did that is because it's a little bit closer to the middle, which is going to speed things up for my treasure fleets. Moving to the west, we do have a gap right here, and there was an independent that I did befriend with the intention to incorporate there at the end of the Age of Antiquity, but I just ran out of time before I had that incorporation. Not a big deal, because I knew I could set up a settlement here, or if another independent pops up, as we see, then I will befriend them and eventually incorporate them. Moving further to the west, again, as Carthage, you get 2 for 1 on the colonist. That made it very quick for me to set up Hadramedum, as well as Rusicade, and that puts me touching the west coast over here, which starts getting me access to whatever this coastal is over here that my scout identified. I did acquire Femai as a peace deal. I kind of regret that. I think I should have kept the war going in hindsight, and I should have taken Yasadarapura. Yasadarapura, just like on the east side, it's a little bit closer to the middle, so better access to some of those distant lands. And you can see in this point right here, I had a scout here, and they saw this land right here, so this is probably the closest point that we have to the distant lands, which means it would have been an ideal spot to be. So how are we looking at the end here? Well, exactly how we need to look. This is a civilization that is effectively spanning west to east. Everything is connected or will be connected by roads, which sets me up for success in the modern age when those things are going to turn into railroads, and they're going to be really, really important. So that's how we are. Let's see how this goes. Here we are at the end of the Age of Exploration. Let's see how we're looking. Remember, for the banker win, it's all about railroad tycoon points, which is all about connected factory resources, which are the same resources that make treasure fleets. So the Age of Exploration is very focused on those resources. As expected, nothing radical has happened in the main continent. I did incorporate Njimi, so now I shouldn't have to worry about roads, which will become railroads connecting my capital. Heading out west is where the majority of the action was. At the end of Antiquity, if you recall, there was a coastal area out here that I saw. It was 4 hexes away from me. That's great, because that meant that my starting naval unit could cross that. It seems like the average damage in an open ocean hex is about 17, so we can just round that up to 20. It does seem like it scales with how far you are from a coastal hex. That means that your naval units can cross 5 hexes easily. This would just be 20, 40, 60, 80. They'd have at least 20 hit points by the time they got over into a nice, safe coastal area. So I put my first naval unit over here to start exploring. At the same time, I'm also rushing cartography. This made it so that my civilian units can also cross the open ocean. Since the settlers are pretty cheap, I could just buy them here at Rusicade, and then I could have them waiting right here, and then they can cross as soon as I get cartography. It's a dangerous voyage. They end up being a little bit banged up, but that has no impact on their ability to settle. This island here I've dubbed Okinawa because I think it looks a bit like Okinawa. I think I could have settled this and gotten 4 treasure fleets from one city if I just settled right there. But the game offered up a quest to get 3, and I took it without thinking. So this meant I used an extra city, probably didn't need Toledo. It made me deal with some more unhappiness that I didn't need to. Moving down, there's nothing else good until we get to Sevilla. Not a fan of this disconnectedness, but these spots north of Sevilla just weren't worth the unhappiness. I did initially overlook the silver as a treasure fleet resource, so distant land silver and gold can also be a treasure fleet resource. These 3 cities got me my first treasure fleet delivered in turn 44, which means they started generating in turn 35. It takes me 8 turns to generate, plus 1 turn for transit. They were generating 5 treasure fleet points total, which went to 6 as soon as I improved this second spice resource. So that came out to be 3/4 of a treasure fleet point per turn. So what exactly is the workflow for a treasure fleet? First, you got to settle on distant land. Then you need to improve a treasure fleet resource. Then you need to build a fishing quay in that settlement. And you have to have shipbuilding researched. Once all 4 of those conditions are met, your settlement will start producing treasure fleets. While I was going down the treasure fleet path, I was also buying and producing conquistadors, and I still have a couple that are staged over here. Just didn't get a chance to really use them. Like a miner panning for gold, I was looking for Christopher Columbus. I have a separate video for him, and I'll put a link for that in the description, but he reveals all the coastal areas. This is key, because now I know where I need to settle for more treasure fleets. After activating Columbus, I was disappointed. There was really only one area I liked, that's right here, where I have Valladolid at. What I really wanted was up here, but somebody settled Fuzhou before I could get one of these 2 squares. I was going to get 3 treasure fleet resources, but I ended up having to settle right here for 2, really kind of in a suboptimal area, but I'm optimizing for these treasure fleet resources. After that, I settled Madrid. Quite frankly, the pickings were slim, but that one resource is still over a 10% increase in treasure fleet points, so it certainly has marginal utility. From then on, a lot of this game was spent really just managing happiness. Out here on the other continent, we have Nansurani. This was an independent that I befriended, and then I decided to incorporate. I incorporated because I wanted these 3 treasure fleet resources. I wanted to get them before Lulami decided to expand and take them. Looking at the middle of this continent, there are resources, but they aren't coastal, so they don't help with the treasure fleets. I used some excess conquistadors to explore the area. Some of them only activate on specific type of distant lands tiles, like one of them needs to be a navigable river, and the other is looking for natural wonders, of which there are apparently none on this continent. The other nice thing about conquistadors is they can't really get attacked, they're hard to damage, they can go anywhere, so I could figure out exactly where all of the capitals were, which is helpful when you've got the banker. Near the end of this age, I did end up taking this spot to snag these 2 resources, so I got the gold and the tea. That put me at 16 cities and 15 resources. In all likelihood, I won't get 16 factories. Some of these archipelagic cities just don't have the space. Like Toledo, I had to start throwing some happiness buildings down to keep them happy. For the modern age, I'll be looking to settle and befriend and incorporate in this open corridor along here. Really, I'm only going to be restricted by unhappiness, and I'll be looking to snag these factory resources, but if a city doesn't, if it doesn't end up having one just based on placement, that's okay, because that city can get a factory and they can be a consumer of those factory resources. One thing to keep in mind for an economic victory is that your capital needs to have a rail station, and if there's no space to build one, then you're going to need to pursue a different victory path. I really pulled back on building in my capital to ensure that I can get a rail station and a factory. However, you can switch capitals at the beginning of an age, so I could have built Carthage out more, and then if I ran out of space at the beginning of the age, I could have switched my capital to Hippo or Phimai. For the modern age, if I have all 15 resources being used in factories, it'll take me 500 divided by 15 turns, which is 33 turns to get the banker. Then it'll be 14 turns to bank in each capital, 1 turn to move, and 1 turn to activate with 7 capitals. This means that it'll be 29 turns after mass production to win if I don't increase the resources and factories or decrease the civilizations at play. Quite frankly, Benjamin up here is looking pretty weak. I think he's got 4, maybe 5 cities, and Himoko is also looking a bit weak, although she's pretty spread out. But I think my real battle is going to be with the settlement limit and local unhappiness. Alright, so I'll see you at the end of the modern age. My record is turn 101. Let's see if I can do better than that this time. Welcome to the modern age. Did I beat my best for an economic victory? Did I beat yours? Let's see how this played out. One thing to know is I did select the American civ, and I did that for the prospector. I think he is absolutely essential for a good economic victory. Taking a look at the progress meter, we can see it's at 46%. Now keep in mind, this is measuring the age progress, it's not measuring the victory progress. If we want to see how people are doing towards victory, we can come over here and take a look at rankings, and this will show you how people are actually progressing through the different legacy paths. Okay, taking a look at the homelands, not much in the way of changes here, a few small changes, but we will get to those later. The real action for me was out here in the continent of Atlantis. As I predicted, I told you I was going to come out through this area here, and I did. I was a little bit slow, and I probably left some resources on the table, so I didn't snag this, and I was a little bit slow in turning Lisbon into a city, incorporating it into a city. And it really scared me as these two settlements started closing in on this. I knew I needed to keep this corridor open, so I ended up incorporating this and settling Washington, D.C., which is both a railroad and a factory, in very quick order. Talking about factories and resources, I did get lucky if we switched over to the modern age, because this area is just rich with coffee, so that definitely helped me for my railroad tycoon points. And I did pick America because I wanted the prospector, and I did put him to use. So there's this orange out here that I wanted to take. That isn't connected to anything else, but that's my orange now, and that is a factory resource. There is a coffee right here, right next to Sheffield, that I wanted to snag, so I used the prospector for that. And you saw some stuff a little bit weird out west. That's this piece of chocolate right here. You normally can't get a shape like this, but the prospector did get that for me. I really wanted to use the prospector here, but there was no resources in this corridor for me to snag, so that's what caused me to have to make Washington, D.C. Okay, talking about those resources and the railroad tycoon points, how'd this go? Turn 15 was my railroad station. That's when I had that researched, and as soon as I research it, I start buying it. I want to get myself down that path as quickly as possible. Turn 31, I had the factory researched, so I bought a couple of factories and I started slotting them in other cities to start getting them built. By turn 43, I had 150 railroad tycoon points. By turn 50, I was at 300 railroad tycoon points, and turn 59, I was at 500 railroad tycoon points. So going from turn 50 to 59, those 9 turns for 200 railroad tycoon points total, it was about 22 railroad tycoon points per turn. It was a little bit over 22, it was like 22 and a quarter railroad tycoon points per turn. Okay, so what does that look like from a resources perspective? If we open this up, we can see I did a lot of work with the chocolate. And the first thing I did, Carthage had a factory, so I slotted chocolate in there. And as soon as you slot a chocolate in a factory slot, it also takes your leftmost slot. And the other thing you can do is you can fill it up with all of your other same resources. So that means for Carthage, I was getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 factory resources, railroad tycoon points per turn from Carthage. And I think I had 3 other factories that I bought off the bat, so I ended up putting some coffee in Zaragoza, tea in Madrid, and I probably wasn't thinking, so I put some coffee in Hadramita as well. It wasn't a big deal though. The optimal way to do this though would be whatever factory resource you have the most of, put that in whichever settlement has the most slots available, and then work your way down. Whichever factory resource you have the second most of, you go to your settlement that has the second most slots, make sure that it has a factory, start filling those up, because you are going to get some more factory resources as you play. Now, one thing I want to draw your attention to is we've got some cotton over here. In the previous portion of the video, I really talked about treasure fleet resources, and it might have made it sound like treasure fleet resources are the same thing as factory resources, and that's just not the case. Cotton goes all the way back to antiquity, so does kaolin as well, and those were not treasure fleet resources. Silver and gold can be treasure fleet resources, but they do not show up as factory resources. So not every treasure fleet resource is a factory resource, and not every factory resource is a treasure fleet resource. And once I hit my 500 railroad tycoon points, the banker showed up right in my capital, and then I started moving him around. Now there's 7 other civs, so that should take me 14 turns total to do the banker ceremony. He has to move and activate. Move and activate. So 2 turns per civilization. For this game, it cost me about 6,300 in gold and 517 in influence. I had some bad relationships. These people are at war with me. I was pretty rich, so it wasn't a big deal. I believe each of these cost me 3,000 gold each and 517 in influence. The good relationships cost a lot less. As I was pretty rich, it wasn't really a big deal. But if I was a lot more resource constrained, then it might have been a situation where I need to really interleave my bad relationships with my good relationships. So maybe I might have had to gone to Himiko first, then gone to there, and then gone to there, and maybe one more while my bank and my influence builds back up, and then I can go for that one. What you don't want to do is you don't want your banker sitting on a capital not working for a single turn. It should take you 2 times the number of other civilizations to execute your banker's actions. And really the only reason I have these alliances is because they were getting me some extra science. In my experience so far, alliances have caused me to get into wars. They haven't stopped me from getting into wars. So here we are at turn 72, and my banker is at his last spot, and we're going to go ahead and click this, and that should be the end of the game. There we go. So 72 turns for the economic victory. Let me know if you can do any better. Thanks, and I will see you across the ages.